a professor last semester mentioned that if a professor gives you a syllabus and then changes the syllabus or doesn't go with the syllabus, you can have that grade. You can challenge the grade you get in that class, particularly if you can show that you were harmed by the professor speeding things up or slowing things down, or if they rescheduled things, didn't give you a lot of notice, and a written document showing that they were changing it.
Sure. Okay.
So if a due date gets changed, or the criteria for a project or for an assignment changes, and they don't give you advance warning, that's a breach of the contract that they gave you at the beginning of the semester.
Which means your grade is subject to challenge, potentially to appeal.
Yes, your grade is subject to appeal, and not only if the syllabus being changed or not followed is the easiest way to challenge a grade, but there are a number of other situations where you might want to appeal. Specifically, if one student is given preferential treatment over another student, or over you, if you and someone else turned in effectively the same paper, but they gave one person a B and they gave you a D, that's if the paper is qualitatively the same, you should get the same grade.
Hopefully not exactly the same, because then that's plagiarism.
Right. Yes. Right. Avoid plagiarism at all costs. That's we're going to have a whole show about plagiarism.
Nice.
Well, maybe not a whole show. But we're going to have a whole section of a show about plagiarism coming up here in a couple
Right
weeks.
on. But assuming it's not plagiarized, same quality of work, dramatically different grades.
Right, and just general like performance in class. If you're there as much as someone else, and you participate as much as someone else, you should get the same grade as that other person. And if you feel like that's not happening, and it's hard to say because the teacher isn't legally allowed to tell you what someone else got.
Right.
And in fact, the school can't legally tell you what someone else got. But if you have the feeling that another student is being preferred over you,
or if they told you so,
yeah. Those are certainly grounds for appealing your grade.
Now, how do you do that?
So if you're pretty confident that that's what happened, either they changed the syllabus, that's pretty easy to document. They didn't follow the syllabus, or if it feels to you like they preferred some students over other students, or had some students do certain things and other students do easy things, those sorts of differential treatment or changing the syllabus, you can appeal. First, you have to write a letter, or an email actually is recommended nowadays in modern electronics.
Of course, yeah.
It's easier to document that it actually happened, and once it goes to the NAU email system, it's property of the school, and neither you nor the professor actually owns that document. And you send an email to the professor saying, hey, I don't think you treated me fairly, or these changes to the syllabus messed me up, and this is how. You have to be able to make an argument. You have to be able to write it out. And if you're not good at that, I'm sure you know somebody who's an English major.
Sure.
Or something, or a parent, or I don't know, you're college kids. You could probably get a lawyer.
Yeah, or you could learn how to write.
Right.
Idiots.
Oh yeah, college.
Yeah.
College kids.
Sorry.
You might know how to write.
I'm not fed up with that at all.
Yeah, I've read some essays. It's not pretty out there.
No.
So you write an email to your professor saying, hey, I don't think you treated me fairly. I don't think this grade is fair. And they're required within 10 days to sit down with you. 2 weeks, but 10 business days. To sit down with you and talk about it, and hear your complaint, and tell you what they think about it. So they're supposed to provide their side of the story, and you have the option, an option I highly recommend, of having a silent observer go in with you. And you have to notify the professor at least 2 days in advance that you're going to have somebody there with you. But they're required, like the silent observer is a fairly major part of this process. And if you can get one, you should, even if it's a friend or another professor would be better. Just someone you know and trust and respect, who can sit there and listen, so that if the professor is still being a dick,
mm-hmm.
you can appeal to a higher.
You have documentation for that. You have someone who is in the room who can say, "Hey, the professor was being a dick."
Right, and so most professors, I would imagine, would respond to a well-written statement that, "Hey, you didn't treat me fairly," by at least conceding something and maybe changing your grade.
Right.
And if they don't, then you have to write an email to an administrator in their department. Usually the department head. It's different for different departments. So if you're in whatever department you're in, you can just go to the website and look for administrative assistant under their contact us section. Whatever school you're in. I'm in social and behavioral sciences, and so I go to the SBS website and look for.
Right. I'm in the School of Communications, so I go there.
Right.
But whatever school your department happens to be in.
You send an email to to the administrative assistant and say you need to appeal this grade, and you've already spoken to the professor, and they'll schedule something within 2 weeks, a sit down. Once they tell you when the sit down's going to happen, you have a week to write down exactly what happened in as much detail as possible, called the statement of grievances, or statement of issues. And you have to give it to them at least a week before the meeting.
You have a week to write the Declaration of Independence.
Right. Statement of issues. And you need to be as detailed as possible, as thorough as possible. Everything you think shows that this professor was being a dick and you don't deserve this grade. If it's a syllabus issue, which some political science majors had last year with an upper division class.
Oh yeah.
The professor totally changed everything, and they were all kind of screwed by it. Or at least that's how they were presenting it to me. If it's a syllabus thing, it's pretty easy to document. Hey, here's the syllabus, and here's what actually happened, and you just write it out in your statement of issues, and you bring any supporting documents, and you bring your silent observer to meet with the administrator. It'll probably be a dean or associate dean or something like that. And they'll schedule a sit down with you and the professor, and you'll talk about it. The professor will present their side of things, you'll present your side of things, and they'll come to a decision. And if you don't like that decision, you might want to rethink your case. You might not actually have a case if you're at this point and they still disagree with you. But if you're confident that you deserve a better grade and the professor was definitely treating people differently, or they definitely did something wrong by their standards.
Sure.
Keep in mind that the school writes their own laws that they have to apply to themselves, much like the FBI. And so it's definitely biased in favor of the professors, just like all of the law is.
Right, like you'd expect. Biased in favor of those in power.
But
That's really what we're talking about here.
Right, and the people in power write the laws and then have to apparently abide by them when they want to, and then they decide whether or not they broke the laws. And so that can go to the again, if they disagree with you and the dean sides with the professor, you can appeal to the office of the provost.
Right.
And then the provost will create a committee, and that'll be a big long process. You should probably have a lawyer for.
Can you take if this isn't going your way and you really think you were wronged in this case, can you take this all the way to ABOR? Is that no? Okay.
It's not an option.
All right.
Unless. I mean, you can go to like
the Arizona
the College
Board of Regents.
Arizona Board of Regents.
Yeah.
They're the governing agency that governs
universities in Arizona.
Schools, yeah. If you feel like you weren't given the right procedures, you can appeal to the president of the school. But they're going to follow the procedures because the procedures are written for their benefit.
Right.
And so that's it. Sort of the long meandering sort of path you can take. Write your if the professor doesn't follow the syllabus and it fucks up your grade, or the professor is preferential towards other students, or in some way treats some students different from other students, write that professor an email. Go in, sit down with them, explain to them what happened, and they should change your grade.
Okay. Now, okay, I have just a little question. Just this is my experience with this. Now, I didn't exactly have this happened a couple semesters ago, and it wasn't an issue where the professor changed the syllabus, and it wasn't an issue where the professor was favoring others over me. This was an issue where I felt that the rules laid down in the syllabus were kind of bullshit. And here's, okay, so I had this class. It was a 1 credit course. And the instructor at one point assigned us a worksheet. Alright? And it was a pretty simple worksheet. It was a course about, like, I forget, some kind of grammar class. And professor assigns us a worksheet. Right? And I totally spaced it. And I'll cop to that. I forgot to do it. I showed up in class, and he was like, all right, everybody turn it in. I was like, oh, fuck. And I forgot it. And he had been very clear that he does not accept late work, so I didn't bother to turn it in, you know. And I later just glanced through the syllabus and discover that this little 2-page worksheet was worth 30% of the grade. Now, I ended up getting a C in that class. So if you're good at math, you know that I got a perfect score on everything else.
Oh man, that hurts.
Everything else. I forgot to turn in a worksheet, he wouldn't accept it late, and I got a C in the class. Is that liable for appeal?
As I read the rules,
Yeah.
I want to say no.
That was my suspicion.
Again, with the rules being written by those in power, to
Sure.
those in power.
Yeah.
This professor sounds like they know a little bit about making sure everything is well documented on paper.
Perhaps.
If it hadn't been in the syllabus, did they go over the syllabus in the beginning of class, or did they just hand it to you and tell you to look at it sometime? Do you remember if the first day of class?
I don't remember. The first day of class, I was a little bit flustered just because it was my first experience with this particular teacher, and I wasn't thrilled. I want to say yes, but I also want to say that I had no idea that worksheet was worth 30% of the grade. So I don't think he specifically went over that. I didn't know that. I'm pretty sure it was on the syllabus, but he didn't go over it specifically. So, yeah, it was a long time ago. It's a 1 credit class. It's the only C I've had in my time here, and I'm totally over it. But I'm just wondering if that's the kind of thing, because that would be the only case so far in my college career where I would say, hey, I'm challenging this because I deserved an A in that class.
I would say always better to be safe than sorry, and there's no harm in writing the guy an email saying that if he didn't tell you when he handed you the thing, this is worth 1/3 of your grade, which obviously he didn't.
Right.
It's worth at least sending him an email saying, hey, I think this is unfair. Maybe, if you would have mentioned it sort of out loud when you handed it to me, sort of in a, I guess, friendly sort of, hey, I'm a little upset about this.
Right.
We should talk about it. Maybe you can change your policies for next semester. Maybe you can make it more clear for students in the future so they don't face the same things I do, especially near the end of the semester when you're obviously a great student with straight A's and this one stupid paper is bringing down 1/3 of your grade.
Right. Yeah, freaking paper is a worksheet.
Yeah.
This was a fill in the blanks worksheet. Sweet God.
You had every reason to believe that it was a stupid fill in the blanks.
I had every reason to believe that it was a 20-point, nothing thing. I don't know.
And I think expressing that to the professor, if nothing else, might make them a little more vocal about it next semester.
Fair enough.
Other students in the same situation.
Yeah.
I don't know that you have a lot of legal recourse through official channels, but a lot of times if a professor does something dickish, they don't know it. And if you tell them, hey, this was kind of messed up, they might say, oh, wow, you're right, that was kind of messed up. Maybe I can't change your grade entirely, but it looks like you were close to the cusp for a B, so we'll call you a B.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, and that's not even like that's just the worst thing I've encountered here. I mean, I've heard some stories. I know an individual who, when he was a college student, had a class where I believe there was some kind of circumstance where he had a paper and he wasn't able to turn it in because there was extenuating circumstances. Eventually, did it. Went to the professor, explained himself very reasonably what happened. Tried to and said, "Can I turn it in late? Can I still get the points?" And the teacher said, I completely understand. Everything you're saying is very reasonable. I'm not going to accept it. And the individual in question said, "Why?" And the teacher said, "I'm the prof."
Yeah, and that's the kind of attitude that a lot of, especially like older professors have, is and the school agrees with them, right? In writing the agreements that all the teachers have to go by, it says pretty clearly that if you write it into your syllabus, it's the law of the land.
Right.
If you whatever you want to have happen, if you put it in your syllabus, that's what happens.
Yeah. Well, I mean. Had I known about the grade appeals process, I might have attempted it with this particular course, but definitely if you're in the sort of circumstance that I described with my buddy, there is a recourse for you. If it's just straight up unfair, if you had my senior year high school English teacher who was a hardcore feminist, and that's totally fine, but she gave extra credit opportunities to the girls in the class, not the boys, then stuff like that.
Yeah, that's definitely clear-cut example of things you cannot do in the college environment.
Right, and there is recourse to correct that, which we have told you.
So,
all right.
So the police.
Fuck them.
Yeah, fuck 'em.
Man, that's my favorite part of the show, just because we get to listen to that song.
Yeah, that's a custom edit I did this afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I'd trim it down a little bit, get just to the core of the police fuck with me. I'm gonna fuck them up.
No, I dig that.
And just to remind you, you're listening to the Late Night Law Review on KJAK, KJAK, 1680 AM in Flagstaff. So yeah, please come at you. Hey, you.
Yeah.
Come over here. What's your response?
Have a nice day. Or no, am I being detained?
Am I being
there
detained?
There we go.
Am I being detained?
Right.
Am I being detained, or am I free to go?
Right.
I don't know. That's not clear. Can you tell me? At that point, if you're being detained, they have to tell you why you're being detained.
Correct.
So fuck them. If they can't come up with like a 2-sentence excuse for keeping you from doing your thing, then fuck you. Have a nice day.
Walk away.
Yeah. So, and that's all stuff that we covered last week.
Right.
So to continue on with that encounter, sort of, what to do if you're being fucked with by the police. At that point, the cop says, yes, you're being detained. You're kind of in a little sort of gray area now. They're going to ask for your ID. That's definitely going to happen. Show me some ID. And my response, I can't tell you what your response should be. My response is always, am I being arrested? I can identify myself as is required by the state constitution.
Right.
My name is Skylar C. I live at this address. That's who I am. I'm required to identify myself to you. That works legally and technically. You can follow that path of identifying yourself, because the law doesn't specify an identification card. It says you have to identify yourself to law enforcement anytime they ask.
Okay.
What it does say is that if you're being arrested, well, if they suspect that you're lying to them, they have the authority, because they say they do, to take you into custody until they can prove that you are who you say you are. So that's where it gets a little complicated. But if they're just trying to fuck with you and you assert that you have some rights, they might fuck with you a little less.
They might back down a little bit, because, I mean, if nothing else, because they're not used to someone who knows their shit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And that can be dangerous for certain demographics who are often the victims of police violence and oppression.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's good to be white.
But for those of us that have that privilege,
Yeah.
saying, hey, I don't have to show you ID, is a pretty good way, if nothing else, of educating them. I've run into like young cops who didn't know that I didn't have to show them ID until I
Really?
told them that. And then they...
That's funny.
And then their response is, oh, well, I'm writing you a ticket. And that's where they get you, because if they're writing you a ticket or a citation or charging you with any sort of criminal or civil crime, you have to provide identification, like a form of legal
That's where you
identification.
have to show your card.
You have to show your card then. Also, and so there's that if you're getting a ticket, you have to show them your ID. If you're driving, obviously you have to show them your driver's license and your proof of registration and insurance. But if you're just walking around doing your thing, you just have to identify yourself until they start writing you a ticket, and then you have to you have to give them ID and prove who you say you are. I had a really fun story, but it's getting kind of late in the show, so I'll skip the...
Save it for next week's episode?
Yeah, I think so. I think I might. It's loads of fun.
Okay.
The
Go ahead.
other thing about identification is Arizona's Senate Bill 1070
Oh, yeah.
explicitly states that if any agent of the government reasonably suspects that you are here in this country illegally without proper documentation, then they're required to ask you for documentation proving that you're here legally.
And that part was not, correct me if I'm wrong, but that aspect of SB 1070 was not overturned.
Right, because it uses the language of reasonable suspicion, which
Right.
is a well-established
Precedent, yeah.
legal standard, and it gets complicated, right? Because reasonable suspicion says that a reasonable person, under these circumstances, would think that based on specific and articulatable facts, I suspect this crime has been committed. So if I can say, well, they only speak Spanish and they look nervous. Well, shoot.
Lock them up.
Lock them up.
Send them to Eloy.
I don't think they do that if you only speak French or if you only speak any number of other languages.
Well, I think I don't know. I think that if I'm a cop and I'm walking down the street and a guy looks maybe a little bit Swedish, I might suspect him of being here illegally. I mean, they're so Swedish. How could he possibly have gotten into the country?
Right.
He must have hopped the Atlantic.
Yeah, must have.
Yeah.
So there's that. Although technically, and the Supreme Court sort of agrees that you can't be racist. You can't say, well, they're brown, so I had to ask them for ID.
Right.
But it's, I don't know, it's really easy for a cop to articulate after the fact, oh, well, I don't know, I didn't like the way he looked really nervous. Oh, well, he was nervous, obviously he did something.
Right.
And
Cops, man. I just want to say that, depending on your experience, you may very well find yourself in a situation where the cops are trying to talk to you, and if that doesn't happen to you very often, as has been the case with me when I've had to talk to cops because they've come to my house or they've pulled over and pulled over next to me on the road or whatever, you get flustered, you get nervous. I mean, these are the cops. These people are the law. They have guns. They can theoretically tell you what to do, and it's really, really easy to get into the mindset of I will do whatever you want as long as you don't do anything to me.
I mean, that's why they have the training they have.
Sure, they rely on that.
They're trained in how to walk in a more aggressive way.
Yeah.
They wear foam padding under their clothes to make them look bigger.
Really.
And also the belts with all the their secret utility belts and
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah.
They have a foam
Batcave.
a foam pad that wraps under that so it doesn't hurt their hips.
Nah.
So they have the guns and the badge. They're taught how to stand. They're taught how to talk. They're taught how to look down at people. They're given training. Like half of the police training is how to intimidate the populace.
Right.
So that they'll do whatever you want, and so that they'll say whatever you want them to say.
And it's easy to fall into that trap.
So easy.
But we strongly encourage you that if you are being fucked with by the police, stick to your guns. Remember your rights in as much as you have them, as George Carlin might say.
Right. Okay. So we have about a minute left, and so that actually sort of transitions into how I wanted to end this section.
All right.
With just a general plea to the population here that if you're innocent and just want to get out of this terrifying situation, you're just I'll just say whatever because I didn't do anything and I'll just tell them what they want to know.
Sure.
Don't talk to the pigs. Anyone who ever sort of questions them, if you don't comply with their illegal searches and their unwarranted harassment, then you're making it harder for everyone else, for the less privileged, right? So you're in a position where you can stand up for your rights because nothing bad will happen to you.
Right.
But people of color, for example, who if they stand up for their rights, will get taken into custody and physically assaulted.
Yeah.
I mean NYPD. Just look up NYPD broomstick, and there's some video footage of some really, really horrible things that have happened over and over and over again to people of color in police custody.
Eat after you watch that video, not before.
And as people who don't have a lot to lose in this situation, the more we stand up and say, no, you're harassing me for no good reason, you can't articulate a suspicion, and I will not consent to this search, I'm going to leave. If you stand up and say that, it gives that cop a reason to stop and hesitate, to think again before they do that to someone else.
Right, exactly. And we're in college, man. We're the elite, motherfuckers. They can't screw with us.
And on that
we own
note,
them.
You've been listening to the Late Night Law Review on KJAK, KJAK, 1680 AM in Flagstaff. You can listen to us online. You can listen to this show online every night from 10 p.m. till about 11 p.m.
Yep, every Tuesday night from 10 to 11.
Every Tuesday night from approximately 10 to approximately 11. at either kjack.org or soundtap.com/kjack, or on your phone with the SoundTap app.
And keep an ear to the ground, because some of those online formats are going through some changes, and we're going to make everything better. We're going to make everything easier soon, so keep an ear out for that. And so